Okay, welcome back. So far we've talked about how we can select elements with jQuery and also how we can manipulate them. Now we're going to introduce the final big missing piece, which is events in jQuery. So think back to vanilla.js. When we added event listeners, we used a method called addEventListener. Well, it turns out that jQuery has a ton of methods that have to do with events. So I have the events section open on jQuery. You can get there by just clicking on events here. So as I scroll through here, you can see just how many jQuery event methods there are. jQuery comes with a ton of them. So what I'm going to do is highlight the three most important ones, the three that you can use 99% of the time. Those three methods are click, keypress, and on. And I said that these three you could use 99% of the time. It's actually more like this one right here you can use 99% of the time. So I'm going to show you click and keypress first, but my main objective is to show you how awesome the on method is. So let's get started. So jQuery's click method is how we can very quickly and easily add a click listener to a single element or a collection of elements. So you can see I have two examples. In this case, I'm selecting something and then adding a click listener with .click. So we select something with the ID of submit, we run .click on it, and then we pass in a callback function. And this callback function will be run when something with the ID of submit is clicked. And because it's an ID, there's only one on the page, so when that one item is clicked, this code is run. If you take a look down here, you can see that I'm selecting all buttons on the page, which it could be 1, it could be 10 buttons, and I'm adding a click listener to all of them. So anytime a button is clicked, we'll alert someone clicked a button. So let me demonstrate that now. I have a simple HTML page with jQuery included as a CDN. And I'm going to add in, let's do jQuery events, and we'll add in a few buttons. So the first one, we'll say don't click me. And the next one, we'll say seriously, don't click me. And the last one, we'll say this is your last warning. So we'll save and open this in the browser. And always just check that jQuery loaded. Okay, looks good. So we'll start easy here by adding a click listener to this H1. And there's only one on the page, so we just need to select first with $. So H1, that gives us the right H1, there's only one. And then we run .click on that. And then we need to pass in a callback function, which will be run whenever we click on that H1. So behind the scenes, click is using addEventListener, and it's adding a click listener on this H1. And we can either do an anonymous function, which is way more common to see, but somewhat more intimidating for newer students, or we could write a named function separately and then pass the name of that function in here. But like I said, anonymous functions are way more common. So what we want to do is just alert H1 clicked. And I'll hit enter here. And now if I click on this H1, you'll see I get H1 clicked. And that doesn't happen on any other element. It does happen over here, remember, because my H1 goes all the way across the screen. So that's a CSS issue if I want to change the size of the H1. But it only happens when I do click on the H1 element. Now what I want to do is show how we can add a click listener to a collection of elements. So I'm going to select all buttons here. So $, button, and then we add our .click, just like that. And we can pass in an anonymous function again as our callback. And this will be run whenever any button is clicked. And we'll just do an alert button clicked. Just like that. And hit enter. And now if I click on any of those buttons, there we go, button clicked, button clicked, button clicked. So think back to vanilla JavaScript. To add an event listener to a collection of buttons, I would have to select them all with query selector all or get elements by tag name, and then I would have to use a for loop to loop through all of them, and then I would have to individually add an event listener, which, to be clear, is happening behind the scenes. But all I have to do is write this line, and that will loop for me. That will add the event listeners individually, which makes our life really easy. Rather than just alerting button clicked, what if I wanted to change the style, change the background color of the button that was clicked? So I would need to add a click listener again. I'll just hit the up arrow, and rather than alerting, what we'll do is change the background color. So that's going to be something.css background, and we'll change it to be pink. So the issue is, what are we calling .css on? And back with vanilla JavaScript, we would use this, the keyword this, and that refers to the element that was clicked on. However, in jQuery, that won't quite work. What we need to do is use the jQuery version of this. This is always a little bit of a confusing idea. I think it helps to remember that what jQuery does is it takes plain vanilla JS and it wraps it in jQuery, in this big jQuery hug, and it gives it some special properties and methods. So if we want to use .css, which is a jQuery method, we have to make sure that we're running it on a jQuery object. So just plain old this is the regular vanilla JavaScript this. So we need to wrap it and tell it this is the jQuery version. So let's test that out. Hit enter here. And now let's click on a button. First we have that alert because we never got rid of this first click listener. And then the background changes to pink. And you can see that will happen to each one that I click. We could also do something like this. So I'll hit the up arrow and I refresh the page. Rather than just changing them to be pink, we could also do a console.log, and we'll console.log the text of the button that was clicked. So it'll be something like you clicked plus, and then I'll make a variable to store this. So variable text equals $this dot, and to get that text out of there, we just need to use the text method, just like that. Console.log you clicked plus text, which is our variable name, and hit enter. And now if I click one, you clicked, don't click me. You clicked, this is your last warning, and you clicked, seriously, don't click me. Okay, so that's all I'll demonstrate about click. To summarize, we can add a listener to one element at a time like we did for the H1, or we can do it to a collection, which is where it really becomes useful. And then lastly, if we want to refer to the element that was clicked, we need to use $this, which is the jQuery wrapper, the jQuery version of the vanilla JS this.